my loyal subjects, and welcome! As you may or may not be aware, Blender 2.75 was released very recently, and obviously if you're watching this in the future, maybe it isn't so recent, maybe you're on later versions, but what I want to talk about today is light portals. I was originally going to cover this in a release candidate video, but yeah, it got released, so I don't have to. Anyway, light portals are amazing. But I want to explain how to use them, and moreover, what they are doing so that you understand how and why they improve your lighting. So this is an internal scene. I'm only using about 32 samples, and it's got very clean lighting. There's a little bit of noise here and there, but really not that much for using an environment light to light an interior scene. Some of you will be aware, and will be familiar with this wall of noise that is a 32 sample scene trying to use environment lighting, versus this light portaled scene, which renders slightly slower, but on the flip side of that, also is way cleaner with way less samples. So, first of all, let's talk about how you set these up. It's really simple. Use lights. They're actually reusing some technology from those originally implemented for lights. So anyway, I'm just going to add an area light in this case, but I'm pretty sure you can do it with any light source, though don't quote me on that. Anyway, so the idea is that you would set up a light source in an area where a lot of light would be coming into your scene. This doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a light source, quote-unquote. It could literally just be a source of light in your scene, something where light's coming in, or some area that it should really be checking for light. You want to be affecting a large part of your visible scene. So in this case, I've got this environment light outside, and then I have this window where a lot of the light's going to be coming in. So I essentially want to say, hey, you should check this window to see if there's any light coming through it, just to make sure. You know, always check that window because it's probably going to be the main area where you're receiving light from. So just at least make sure you're checking there every single time, because that's where most likely your light's going to be coming from. So we've created this. Now, of course, right now it's just an area light. It's just a bright light source in my scene. So what I need to do is I need to check this little portal checkbox. What this will do is it completely disables the light. There is no longer a light there, quote-unquote, casting light into the scene. But notice our scene is a lot cleaner. So for example, if I hide that, you can see it's way more noisy. And then if I show it again, it suddenly, if I, add it to my scene again, it suddenly gets a whole lot cleaner. Because this is basically what is happening. It's going to a pixel and it's trying to gather light from the environment to actually figure out how this pixel should be lit. Where is it receiving light from? It does so by shooting off a bunch of rays, paths, if you will. Basically trying to figure out what path would light have to take to reach this point in space and then bounce into our camera, allowing us to see it. That's why it's a path-traced lighting engine. So the idea is it's, in its default state, the way it normally works is that it just kind of shoots off rays randomly. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but this is a rather heavily walled scene. It's filled with a lot of walls. So what that essentially means is that the scene itself only has a small sliver of area to receive light from. So for example, if I do something like this, and I'll just show it to you without, you can see, oh my god, it's an even worse noise wall. The reason being is because it's casting off all these rays randomly in the scene, trying to find out, hey, where could I receive light from? And only a small percentage of the pixels are going to actually come up with any light. Some of them are just going to have their rays hit walls, in which case it's just going to say, oh yeah, there's totally no light affecting me, look black. And then some of them are going to manage to get a ray through the window, in which it's going to come back as white, or lit, or something like that, in which case it's going to give you this noise. But it samples repeatedly in order to give you a clean image. It samples a bunch of times, basically renders it a bunch of times, and then gives you the average. Go away, Windows. God, that's an irritating thing with Windows when I'm recording with OBS. But then, if I add light portals, you'll suddenly notice it becomes a lot cleaner and crisper. Now, the reason for this is that lights have a bit of code inside them that allows them to basically require a ray to be fired at them. So when it's checking around trying to find lighting, it'll throw an extra ray in there, or it'll take one away. I don't know whether it's taking one away from the existing resources or adding a completely new one. But what it's going to do is that it's actually going to fire it directly at the light. This is to make area lights not horrendously noisy, because again, we're dealing with a very small area, a very low chance of a ray randomly hitting it. It's a bit like firing a gun in a random direction and expecting to hit something. And essentially, what light portals allow you to do is they allow you to aim the ray. They allow you to say, hey, when you're firing off all your rays, aim one here. Aim one here just to check, because this is most likely where you're going to be receiving your light from. So what it essentially will do is that it means that any one of these pixels, one of the first things it's going to do is shoot a little ray off to this window. So that's what Portal does. It basically says, fire a ray in the direction of this window. Now normally with lights, it's to actually make sure that one hits the light, and that therefore every pixel is affected by the light. But if you check Portal, it's not a light anymore. It's just exhibiting that Portal behavior of pulling light rays towards it, but it doesn't actually cast any light into the scene. This is the reason why all my lighting settings disappeared. So as you can see right away, I've got this immediate, I've got this scene, and there's this huge difference. So this is it just shooting off rays randomly, where only some of the pixels are actually getting rays through the window. And you can see that there are all these black speckles and everything. Even with 32, it's rendering it 32 times and averaging, by the way. So what it's actually doing is it's getting all these, some of them are lit, and then it's like, okay, these are correctly lit pixels. And then some of them are not lit, and those are not lit pixels, is the general idea. Because they're firing off rays, and they're only hitting the walls of the room, which, and that's shooting off more rays, and those are only hitting the walls of the room, etc. It gets really, it's sort of a problem with ray tracing is that it creates noise, and this is just how noise happens in Blender in general, is randomness. However, the moment you include a portal in the scene, every pixel is making sure, hey, can I see this light? The reason why we still have noise in the scene at all is just because of the idea of light bouncing off of surfaces. If I went and disabled my light bounce real quick, you'd pretty much see a flawless image. I say pretty much because it's not quite that cut and dry, but you can see here, like, this is a pretty damn near flawless image. It's like, that's pretty damn near flawless. It's got a little bit of noise from the background, but honestly, if I went into my world settings, activating multiple importance sampling, yeah, I mean, that's pretty flawless on the scale of things. If I had a diffuse bounce in here, you can see that noise comes right back. So again, there's stuff like this which you can play around with, and that's kind of how ray tracing works. That's why this is an optimization, and why this will allow you to create some really wicked, just interior scenes. This will allow you to light your interior scenes a lot better, and that's essentially how it works. Hopefully this has informed you, and hopefully now you can start looking at Blender and actually understanding how Blender paths light, because real light is of course photons bouncing through, being emitted from a light source, bouncing around in the scene, and then eventually hitting your eye. So the reason why you can see objects is because light comes in, hits that object, diffuses off it, or reflects off it, or basically just reacts with it in some way, usually gets put off the surface and hits your eye. So if you have a lot of red light hitting your eye, you're going to see red. If you have a lot of blue light hitting your eye, then you'll see blue. So that's the idea, how this stuff works. Matter of fact, this is the reason why computers use red, green, and blue, is because we have 3 cones in our eye, red, green, and blue, which allow us to see red, green, and blue. So people who are colorblind will often be missing one of those cones, or one of them will be defective, so they'll only be able to see 2 colors, or differentiate, for example, between red and green, but they can't tell the difference between blue and green, or something like that. They can't tell the difference between blue and green, and this is one of the things that, like, dogs have, for example. So, anyway, something to keep in mind, something to take a look at, and hopefully this has been informative and interesting and not horrendously boring. But I kind of wanted to talk about ray tracing because it's one of those things that's the core of how Blender does its rendering. Cycles, this is what Cycles does to give you these amazing soft shadows and, realistic lighting. And, you know, that's how it works. So that's path trace lighting, and hopefully that has informed you of some cool shit. So, anyway, make a cool interior scene. Drop some cool pictures. Anyway, have a wonderful day and make cool Blender things.